From the basketball court to the boardroom, and from battling world class athletes to beating cancer, Coach Greg Hess knows what it takes to win. He's here to share how you can unlock your full potential, lead with purpose, and achieve breakthrough results no matter the challenges you face. Hi, and welcome to the U World Order Showcase podcast, where we feature life, health, transformational coaches, and spiritual entrepreneurs stepping up to be the change they seek in the world. I'm your host, Jill Hart, the Coach's Alchemist, on a mission to help coaches and entrepreneurs amplify their voice, monetize their mission, and get visible, leveraging podcasts and Substack. Today, we are speaking with Coach Greg Hess. And Greg Hess, better known as Coach Hess, is an Amazon best-selling author, award-winning business coach, and voted best coach in Katy, Texas. His life expands no, I'm sorry. His life journey spans decades of leadership, from captaining his university basketball team and competing against NBA legends like John Stockton and Dennis Rodman, to coaching at high school and collegiate levels and managing major events like Magic Johnson's basketball camps. After earning his MBA in just 18 months, Coach Hess transitioned from sports to business, holding leadership roles across industries and serving as chief advisor for cloud services at Halliburton. But in 2015, a diagnosis of pancreatic cancer changed everything. Surviving and recovering renewed his commitment to purpose, leading him to launch the Coach Hess brand, dedicated to helping entrepreneurs, professionals, and teams achieve peak performance. Author of Peak Experiences, Breaking the Business Code, and Achieving Peak Performance, The Entrepreneur's Journey, Coach Hess combines a real-world experience with the coach's heart to transform lives. He empowers clients worldwide through one-on-one coaching, strategic planning workshops, and his Empower Your Team program. Welcome to the show, Coach Hess. It's nice to have you.
Wow. Gosh, you read all that, Jill, and I kind of feel humbled, and I'm so grateful for so many good things that have been happening in the life of Coach Hess. So thank
You
you.
know, it's you've done a lot of remarkable things, and one of them that may not that may just get glossed over in all of this is overcoming pancreatic cancer. That's kind of an amazing miracle,
Mhm.
even these days with all the technology that they've come across. It's
I
it's
remind myself of that every day, and it makes it very easy to be motivated. And when you think things are down, you find opportunities because there's always opportunities if you have the right mindset, I guess. But yeah, that was quite an adventure, and you know. Going through that process, it was discovered in why I'm alive. I mean, I had an AFib situation going, and they did a CAT scan and came back and said, "Hey, no blood clots in your lungs," which they wanted to shock my heart back into sync. That's the whole
Mhm.
AFib world. No, but this mass in your pancreas here, and they went too low and got that as far as in the CAT scan. And 14 days after that, I had surgery. And yeah, they weren't sure whether they were got it all or what. I mean, it wasn't a guarantee in any way, shape, or form. I was told to get things in order, and people knew that I was, that were close to me because I had spent a lot of years being a coach and a mentor, and not only in the basketball game, but throughout 30 years of business, I was still called coach, and even though I was sometimes the owner of a company, sometimes whatever the role. I got a lot of messages from people, Jill, that said, "Look, you made a difference in my life." And a lot of people don't get to read those messages because they're in the coffin. Well, shoot,
Yeah.
I came out of there and started to look at those and I went, whoa, you know, um, big guy upstairs saved me for a reason. And it's because I did a good job throughout my life of following my why and never really knew what it was until after this event. And now it's crystal clear, and I live it every day, and it's fantastic. It's really, like I say, fulfilling the potential of others' lives, but my own as well on a daily basis. It was a difficult time. I had a long process of drainage out of my side, as my pancreas, they cut most of it out, and went through drainage, but I didn't go through the Whiffle technique, which means that you would have to live on enzymes for people, and that's a very common. If you've survived pancreatic cancer, you're very commonly going to have to be in that situation. I'm not. I got some nice bullet holes and scars in me because of it, but that's all right. I'm living with that fine, and I live a hundred, have for a long time now, and will continue to. So thanks for paying attention to that. It's not, but why do we need an event to change our lives a little bit? When I was the
Yeah.
chief advisor of cloud services at that time at Halliburton, and now I went through that. Once I came out and read these messages and kind of realized, wait a minute, there's so much more to this. Came down to when I remembered kind of, is why I was going through when I was on the ward. It's kind of a death ward. I was going to
Mhm.
say that. It was a big
Yeah.
hospital here in Houston, and the buzzers would go off, and you would know what's going on. And I'd walk around the halls, because they say you got to walk. And I wasn't in bad shape. I mean, I'm riding bike a lot and I'm all in pretty good shape. So I was able to get moving, but,
Mhm.
5 steps, 6 steps, I mean, that kind of dragging
It's
all the,
big.
the stuff hanging out of you everywhere. And I started walking around and I'd look in people's rooms and you know what? They wouldn't move. They'd be in the same place from when I walked the last time in their room. They were just kind of in there. And I thought, wait a minute, we're supposed to be walking to get recovered. What's up with these people? So I started going into these people's rooms, Joe, and bumping them and saying, hey, what's going on? And when people are on their deathbed, what I learned from doing that experience is that family is the most important thing to them. And I think I kind of knew that, but until you actually spent the time talking with people. Well, then at the end, when I'm 14 days or whatever, I get to roll out. And at that point, I could actually ring the bell. And so I was being rolled out in a wheelchair, even though I could walk. I always was, people who had
Maybe
not
we're
come out of their beds or were still in there that I had gone and talked to were standing at their doors clapping. And I was like,
um,
whoa, I had tears in my eyes and just awesome. And and afterwards, I thought to myself, why in the world would I do that? Are you morbid or what's up with you, buddy? And I really did a self-inspection, and it came down to, believe it or not, when I was 8 years old, I remember drooling the ball down the middle of the floor, making a fake, throwing a pass over to my partner, him catching the ball, scoring the layup, and we win the game. And the thrill of that moment of giving an assist and seeing the joy of a group that we've achieved something together is what I chased all my life. And I didn't realize it until I was 63 or so, 64 years old. But I know now when I look back, what drove me, it was that. I don't know how much money I made or what I did. It was, how could I bring that joy? And how could I give an assist and see things happen? And so now that I know that's exactly what I'm all about, I can magnify and put velocity to that. And I'm really enjoying that experience. And so can others. Everybody can. That's the point of why we're here, isn't it?
it is, and it's kind of why I do my show. It's the give the assist.
Yeah,
My whole thing is
exactly.
get visible. Well,
Yeah.
it's you. You and everybody else that comes on here and shares the message that they're trying to get out to the world. Because it's really important that the world knows that people are doing positive things. We could all lay around in our beds like those people that were on the ward that, they know they should be doing something, but they're just laying there waiting for somebody else to come and do it for them. When they could just, maybe all you can do is roll your feet over and sit up on your bed. Do that. It's enough. And it's a metaphor for life, even if it's just, watering your neighbor's plants because they forgot or something. It's just silly metaphor, but it's just like do something. Don't just lay there and hope that somebody's going to come along and live your life for you. You're here.
Uh,
It's your experience. We want to see what you got, baby.
yeah, come on. Yeah, there's so much. And, you recognize the limitation of time in your life. And, part of the reason I've taken on the book writing and the thing that I recognize the legacy opportunities that you have by doing that. I really realized as soon as I finished Peak Experiences and once it was posted and everything, I kind of had this feeling of, wow, I've got something that not only my children can read, my grandchildren can read, but my great great grand, when I'm gone, they can read. And that's kind of nice to know that there's going to be something there that captures, some of my thinking in this whole idea of making the world a better place, one day at a time, every day, and be present to do it, and have the skills, to come along. I think really helps a lot in guiding people. It's fun. I'll have my 70th birthday. I'll share with everyone on Sunday. I'm having a party here in Katy, Texas, and we've invited a lot of people in a local brewery, and it's just going to be a big celebration. And for all the reasons of, I guess once you survive something like that, and you hit 70, you gotta punch it.
Your dad's turning 90. Seven is a big deal. My dad's turning 90 and he had bladder cancer that he's
Oh,
made it through. And
yeah,
those birthdays, you just gotta celebrate them. And just every day you should celebrate life, but you
yeah,
really you do need to slow down and let your family appreciate you and accept appreciation from other people. It's kind of a hard thing for people to do, but
mhm, yeah,
I think that's why we do birthdays. Why I
yeah.
love birthdays. It's like, hey, let's put a spotlight on you for a minute.
I'm usually pretty low key on it all, but on this one, I said, "Hey, now's the time." And I'm just
Yeah,
fortunate enough to be in the position to host a party for, over 100 people and make it big and bad and fun and just, get the
memorable
rolling. Yeah.
memories.
Yeah. Yeah. We're gonna have, what the heck? Gotta have fun doing it, and it's gonna be good. So part of transformation for anyone, I think is sometimes we have to go through a bit of a sharpening your saw. We've all heard about this from Covey and so on. And something I did that truly is a transformation in my life that I'd like to share with everyone kind of as a big deal, I think. I had been a basketball coach and a high school basketball coach and school teacher for 14 years, I guess, including, well, 12 years at the high school level. And part of that was in Canada and part of that was in Southern California, a place called Westlake Village High School. And while I was at Westlake Village High School, I basically rode my bike everywhere I went. I put in 20 miles a day, and it was beautiful. Of course, a lot of the students, had BMWs and Mercedes and what have you, and wondering what's up with this teacher riding a bike. But it was appropriate for where I was as the head basketball coach and so on. But anyway, I got the opportunity to take the assistant job at the college there in town called California Lutheran University. It's in Thousand Oaks. And a guy named Mike Dunlap was the head coach, and he offered me the assistant job. And so I said, that sounds kind of like the right thing for me to do. And now it was a question of what did I want to do a master's in? At this point, of course, I'm a Bachelor of Education from the University of Calgary. Now, next degree, what do I want to do it in? And I thought, you know what? Time to sharpen the saw. So I took my bike to Jasper, Alberta, totally loaded with all my panniers, everything else, and I rode for 23 days, 2,300 miles, right back to Thousand Oaks. And so that long tour in terms of sharpening a saw and trying to make a decision, a life-changing decision, and I wanted to be able to have impact and really think it through. And good golly, did I ever, a lot of time to do that while I was riding. But what a fun experience. And I guess when I went into that, or as I came to some deep thinking, I realized at that time, mid 90s, we were still functioning quite a bit from a command line on our keyboards. They called it DOS, right? You've probably heard of. And whatever else, our languages that we were using, but we weren't really getting into the graphical user interface. And I saw that coming. I mean, I got, Apple was doing their thing right at that point. You know what? This whole GUI world is going to change the way people function. And I think it may be at this point when I look at it in terms of the transformation of society, it may be, AI could be at the same plateau right now as what that was about at another level and a different way of thinking and where we are. But I
Oh
grabbed
yeah.
onto that and said, I'm going to do a master's in business and I'm going to focus on business process reengineering and get that figured out to make businesses better. And so that's what I did. And when I graduated from there, I continued to just pursue a learning curve around that. And people paid me pretty well along the way. It all worked out well. But I mean, realistically, I was on the learning curve. Am I going to learn more from this text? And I had job over job until I ended up, being the chief advisor at Cloud Service at Halliburton. But I was also in charge of global energy for Sun Microsystem for quite a while. And had some fun roles. president of a company called StrataWeb that we grew and turned out. And some of the technology that I created there is still being used. So it's kind of fun to look back on all that. But it was a matter of chasing a learning curve. And I encourage people when they transform from one event to another, or one part of life, or one phase of life, take the time to think about where you're going to go and what it means to you and what you really want to do.
And don't be afraid of it. I'm
No.
I'm 65, so I do remember all of these, you know, the command
You-
prompt for DOS and the floppy disks. And when you had, we got like two, I was a bookkeeper for a while, and I think it might have been Apple books or something like that. But they
Yeah.
were like two floppy disks. So I could have one for information and one for the program.
Right, right. I remember. Oh gosh.
It was so
Yeah.
long ago, and the transition to online and how it's moved into becoming a part of our lives, and the people that were afraid of it, and then cryptos came along, and people are like so certain that it's a horrible, terrible thing, and I have to say, in the next couple of years, we may find that currency looks a lot different than it did when we were young. And the whole AI thing, you can be mad at it. You can,
Right.
think it's the devil or demons or whatever you want to think. But really, it's the future. It's where we're going. There's so much information, and we need a way to synthesize information in a way that humans can't do that well. I mean, it's just like it can just go deep into the store of the volumes of content that's been dumped into what we call the web. But it's like, I
Yeah,
remember
I see.
when Google
Mhm.
got started, it was
Mhm.
small. You could get your name out there, but
Yeah, it's changing the SEO thinking. It's changing so much right now. I think the future is really about those. It's not going to be what you know. It's going to be how you know how to ask the question.
yeah,
In so many ways. And because you can get the info that you need, you just have to be smart enough. And that's where the next level, I think, of critical thinking will go. Because the tool is a tool, but it's sure pretty good at doing what it's doing. Most people I talk to, it's 10 to 12 hours a week. I was giving a talk yesterday at a Chamber of Commerce thing, and I mentioned that you remember when the microwave first came out, and if you're pregnant, don't get near that thing, baby. I mean, no way. And that went on for about a year or so, and kind of figured out that was foolish. And same thing with the cell phone. At one point, we were getting brain cancer or something from using our cell phones too much by our head. And again, we're kind of at that phase a little bit with AI and some of the fear. Now, no question, these AI bots or whatever we want to call them, companions that people will start to pick up on. Is this good or bad for the youth of our society? And again, it kind of scares me, but then again, maybe not. I don't know. See where it goes, but got to pay attention. That's for sure, because it's just a tool.
it is just a tool. And you said, asking the right questions. I think we're kind of going full circle because it's always been important. Even 2000 years ago, 5000 years ago, however long ago, it's always knowing which question to ask to get the result that you want. And
Yeah,
it's,
yeah,
and then going about finding the information and knowing where to look for the information. That to me, when it comes to learning, that's learning.
yeah.
It comes to educating, it's teaching people how to ask questions, how to ask the right questions to get the answer they're seeking, or the information they're seeking, not even the
You
answer they're
mentioned
seeking.
you mentioned teaching, and I'd like to kind of throw out a little my
Yeah.
background there in philosophy and what I created. I think is a very good model that goes right into business and KPIs and how we measure those. And positive sugar goes a lot further than the lemon typically, or however you want to put that. But the idea of how do we positive reinforce in an appropriate way that creates learning that isn't artificialized by whatever else is going on other than the real activities. And so what I would set up in my classes, and it's kind of similar to what I do now as a business coach, only I do it by quarter. But the idea of a week or a 2 week lesson that would be in my psychology class or my economics class or whatever I was teaching, we'd have the 2 week lesson. We'd go through and kind of, but everybody would take responsibility somewhat in teaching their areas. And, it wasn't all just teaching and talking at them, it was interaction. But what I had them do then is start to create their own. I taught them how to build multiple choice questions. And so they started to build multiple choice questions. And then we would use their questions to test themselves, right, amongst themselves. And then we would measure item analysis between A, B, C, and D, how many people guess one. And then we would discuss why did 50% guess this one and only 25? And guess what? Real learning started to happen. Now, within that, as I gave these tests, and of course, I monitored the test question. It wasn't pure, I kind of had control of that, but I knew this item analysis would be a real learning process
Yeah.
that I used. Well, then I put that into a frequency distribution structure, right? Meaning that if you had 25 questions, how many people got 20, how many people got 80, whatever. Then you could adjust your curve relative to how difficult the test was. I mean, if the top was 10 because it was really hard, you can't, you give people grades accordingly. But what I did is every time I would be measuring this with each class, when somebody took a quantum leap in that distribution where they did much better, I'd get on the phone that night and I would call those parents and say, guess what? Billy scored so much better on this test. Man, he's doing great. Pat him on the back. I just wanted to call and tell you. Well, what is Billy thinking when he comes to my class for the next unit? Right?
I'm going to give it all I got because I want that flavor again.
And there it went, and so the learning was, I didn't fit in the state government exam structure real well, but all my students did extremely well on those, and I didn't just follow the curriculum, so to say. I let them build it and test themselves and learn together. Of course, I guided, but that was the best experience I had in teaching, and I did that at Westlake Village High School for 3 years, and I still get messages from students from those like what a difference it made in my future of learning. Because you teach them to learn, you give them, teach them to fish, and they can feed themselves forever. Fish for
Yeah.
me. Yeah, that was the spell.
I, yeah, that I can see the connection between that and coaching on like the basketball court because it's all about the team and working together as a team towards a common goal, which is to understand a subject or a topic or to win a game. But it's all the same. It's being goal oriented as a community, and
Yeah,
I can see that happening in the world in some cases. The more that we all come together and put our ideas in the pot and we're
love
working
it.
towards a common goal, but it's not like any one person has all the answers or has to have all the answers and
Right.
be right. It's the one
Boy,
person has to be right and we have to depend on that one person. It just doesn't work.
as soon as
Everybody
you
else
put
suffers.
a percentage on a test, I think you've crossed that line. I mean, the trick is a little deeper than that. Real quick, it's not you got a 90%, therefore are you 90% of what, and what are we really measuring, and how well you can copy something out of a textbook or whatever. It's got to be the real learning, and I don't know. I'm hoping that that's passed, but at least in my experience with teaching now, and then when I take that back to business, and the idea of building KPI structures or standard operating procedures or whatever we want to put in place for a business, we go back to the same kind of principles. Everybody's involved. We all have, one of the key things of my 7 points of a winning team. You mentioned common goal. That's a chapter I wrote in this book. It's called Common Goal. Let me tell you a story about common goal real quick in terms of making a difference because I think common goals create culture and, like you said, community and involvement and enthusiasm. While I went to Westlake Village High School, I was brought in from Canada as kind of the guy because I could teach the economics classes and I had a pretty good I had a good record and reputation. And I walked into the gym and here were kids that were 6'11", 6'10", 6'8". I mean, big, big kids, right? And I'm looking at these guys going, wow. And I watched them play for a little while without really saying, just kind of hid in the corner. And I could tell that they were really interested, probably more interested in looking good rather than being good. And that's typical. Take a 16-year-old, 17-year-old's got that kind of skill, talent. He's been told he's going to be great all his life. He's got to figure out, wait a minute, new coach in town got a new idea. And my concept, in order to bring the team together and give them all an opportunity to win bigger than they've ever won in their lives, was I created something called, right away, I created it called Psycho D. And the idea was that we would go crazy about defense, right? And we were defensively mindset. So every practice for a half hour, I had a section where I cranked music on everything. We just went nuts through defensive drills and got this mindset built. And then we set a common goal of holding every team under 50 points. And we achieved that many times. And we won a lot of basketball games. And in the end, 5 of those guys that were on that in that program got Division I scholarships, which was a real feather in the cap for these guys, to get there. Because even the reason college coaches won them is because they could play defense. Everybody can, kind of put the ball in the hole and everything, but it was a real, and so
Kind
the
of the
culture,
minimum,
yeah,
the
and the
minimum.
culture, the culture spread. Like the cheerleaders had cheers that were Psycho D. Everything just kind of spread and spread. Then the next thing I do for the schools, I say, you know what? I'm a very big believer in Special Olympics. Special Olympics. So what we did is we set a tournament up between Ventura County and LA County that we were going to run at our school in LA. And we did it. And all of my team, part of being on my team was you had to give 20 hours of community service if you're on my team. That was just a rule I built. And I think it's the right thing that all coaches should be doing that with their high school programs and even their college programs. So anyway, here it was. I gave them the opportunity. We brought the tournament in, and what a transformation of a community. Oh, I mean, it was great for the kids, from the Special Olympians. They loved the tournament, and they like getting their medals and all the things that go on. And I still am very involved in Special Olympics basketball tournaments, by the way. But in this case, it was the change of the community. These people in a community, it was a very wealthy community, but them being involved in that. And then guess what happened? Because we have banners up in our gym. Well, everybody wanted to be a part of our program, right? The culture was there, the culture of Psycho D, one thing. Now we've got this giving community culture thing, feeling, and everybody wants to be a part of it. They're paying big money for these banners all of a sudden that never happened before, at least in that school. So, there's a lot to be said about building a culture and getting it to grow and being part of a community. And I just wanted to share those as kind of successes in my life and I bring that to the companies I work with today. How do we create a culture? How do we get the common goal? How do we get everybody rowing the same way? Get our oars in the water, take ownership, accountability, responsibility. These things have to be ingrained, and self-discipline's the only discipline. So quit trying to fool yourself by trying to get people to do things. Bring them to things.
Yeah, I'm just over here going, uh-huh, uh-huh.
So I told you I'm not afraid to talk it.
Yeah, it if we could just get the world to realize that we're all in this together, and
Yeah.
it starts, it starts in families, it starts in schools, and then it progresses out to communities, and those communities build into societies and countries and states, and then it goes everywhere. And people used to wander around going, I'm just one person. What can one person do? Oh,
Yeah.
something. Just do something. And it doesn't have to be elaborate, but just, take ownership of something. I have a story for you about, I went to Camarillo High School. I wanted to tell you that.
Oh, well, they
It's
were in
just
our
over the
league.
mountain from you.
They're in the Marmani League. They played against us. Isn't that amazing? I
I
knew,
played water polo against
yeah,
Westlake.
Westlake. So when I said that, you knew, oh, that's fun.
Yeah, I knew right what you were going through. I live in a very small town, and we have all the things that you do in a small town. It's the town where they filmed Napoleon Dynamite. Our town is
Oh.
really like that. But we do the Festival of Lights over Thanksgiving weekend for
Yeah.
the holidays. And I know the guy that is in charge of putting up the lights now. And he's really about, he builds fences for people. He has another job, but he also puts up fencing. And he's getting the whole community involved in putting up these lights in the park for the lights festival, because it's
Right.
a huge job. I mean,
Oh
there's
yeah.
so many lights, and last year it was just him and his wife, and
Oh
this
my.
year I think he's just like, no, 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 I need everybody. We're gonna have this big party, and we're gonna talk about how everybody's gonna have lights
Put
this
the
year.
lights up. Yeah.
I
And they'll
love
have
it.
fun doing it.
And the
Yeah.
park is just such a great connection center in our town.
Right.
Everybody goes to the park. We take our grandkids to the park on Thursdays, and
Oh, that's
but it's
nice.
just like there's baseball and soccer, and it's right next to the fairground where they have the rodeo, and it's
Yeah.
just like, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people missing out on that in this world, that kind of experience, you know.
They are, but they don't have to be. That's my whole point. Is you just start with you. Roy's not anybody's super special. He's
Uh,
nobody in our town is super special. They're just those people that they used to be this and now they're doing this position and they're
right.
going to do a different position because we're a small town.
That's
But you can look at a bigger thing like Apple, and they built community, and it's not just the people that work at Apple that are so excited. It's
good.
their consumers will stand in line for days to get their latest product
The
that they don't
loyalty,
even need.
right? The
They're
loyalty's
just
out
like,
of control.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of that. Have the latest, the shiny object world, as you know, is out there in so many ways. Well, I think the community thing's a big part of, certainly what I've engaged with here in West Houston, the Katy area. I'm a member of the Rotary Club here, and we raise a fair amount of money every year. Over $250,000 that we put 100% back into the community and the needs that we see arising here, and I take a lot of pride in that. That's one of my big philanthropic activities. I sit on the board, and but fun events. Just to give you an idea, we do three main events every year. One of them is the Brew Fest, and the Brew Fest, what we created was where all the microbreweries would come for a kind of a festival. We give out awards. We've been doing it for 12 years now, and has grown into kind of a small little community thing to something now that's just huge. So I think the biggest in the United States. They may have one in Denver, but it's not quite the same theme. And yeah, we do really well on that. Multiple bands, and now we have a wine grotto. Anyway, we've raised a lot of money, and especially through sponsorships and that. Second event we do, which is just coming up, is the Katy Triathlon. So we sponsor and organize and plan and manage the whole triathlon that they run here, and it's a qualifier for the I guess Hawaii or wherever the other where people go up. And then the third thing we do is there's a local city festival called the Harvest Festival that goes on. And so we manage that completely for the city. And we end up, we get maybe $80,000 out of that by just managing it for them and being there. And so everybody in the Rotary Club's glad to volunteer and make those things happen. We have a force of about 100 people that get out there and get involved in all of those. And it feels good. It's a good community thing, and we're doing the right thing for communities. And you know, I don't mind spending my time that way. Like you say, be present and do something.
It allows businesses to introduce themselves to a community and to new people coming in to visit, because those kinds of events draw from other communities and
Mm.
can draw from across the country. uh,
Yeah,
you
for
know
sure.
to
Brewfest,
come
people
and
from all over.
yeah, to come and be part of that, and it gives exposure to the local businesses and the local people who are coming out and putting up their little tents or whatever they do to share their wares. But it's real connections with real people, and it's like how humans were designed to interact with each other and
Yeah.
to share their gifts and skills. I
Here's a
love those
crazy
things.
communication story for you. When I was riding my bike down, the trip that I took, and I've ridden a lot of other tours. That's not the only one I've done.
Mhm.
But when I got into Northern California, the Oregon-California border, I started
Mhm.
going into the redwoods there and so on, find a really cool place to camp. And I got my whole set up, and here comes another guy in, and big, strong German guy. He's got ski poles sticking out of his pack. And we're sitting around the campfire there we had that evening, and I just had to ask, what's up with the ski pole? His name's Axel. And he says, well, when I was climbing around up in Alaska, I figured I wouldn't ship that stuff back. They're pretty light, and I'm thinking, oh man, I'm thinking every ounce counts, right?
Right.
It was gone. Cotton carried water, couldn't have it. Gone, that kind of stuff. And so, anyway, next morning I get up and kind of, he's still sleeping. I go, whatever, I'm on the road. You only can go about 10 or 15 miles before you got to get all your stuff and dry it out, right? Because it gets wet every night along that coast. I mean, it just fog sits in on it and gets in.
Mhm.
Well, I'm drying my stuff off, put it all back on, go down the road. Next, go to the next campsite, camp out, don't see any, don't see him at all. But the next day I'm in Modesto, an area along the coast there on the PCH, and I'm sitting having breakfast. And there's what I call the peacock riders, which I am one now. And those are people who ride road bikes with all the colors they got to have on them. And, so I'm
Love
sitting
that.
there with a whole bunch of Modesto people like that. They're looking at me going, "Oh, buddy, what have you been doing?" And of course, I'm a bit of an anomaly. Guy's ridden, I don't know at that point, probably 1,600 miles or something. And they're asking me stories about what I ran into. How do you do this? Well, all the different questions. And I'm talking, kind of, feeling like him because I've been kind of lonely. You weren't around people that much when you're riding. So I was loving to tell a story. You can tell I like to talk. So I'll look up while we're having breakfast, and all of a sudden I see ski poles go down the road in front of me. I freak out. I jump out of my chair and I run to the door and I open the door and I yell, "Hey, Axel! Hey, Axel!" So he stops and I'm going out after, out to grab him, and just say, "Hey, I want to, Well, when I'm going out, I look back and all the people in the restaurant have their faces right up to the window because they think it's going to be a big battle because they thought I was saying, "Hey, asshole." Can you believe that? There's a communication problem.
That is hilarious. So I want to ask you the question first, and then I want to ask you a little bit about how you actually organize your coaching, which I would assume is going to be in groups. Um, or do you do coaching and do you do like in-person coaching? Maybe I should ask it
I
that
do
way.
I do three things in my coaching program, real straightforward. I do one-on-one coaching, but when I say one-on-one coaching, that's with a company typically, not only the owners. I'll go deep into the team, right?
Hmm.
So I'm hired by a company to be their business coach, and I've had
Okay.
my retention on that's about 4 years right now. For my clients, it's done very well. Second thing I do is called Empower Your Team. So now I go in and I use DISC as my assessment tool. Use DISC and we do an analysis. We learn about ourselves, we learn about our team and how we communicate better, and we learn about how to communicate with our customers, our clients, or whoever we're working with in that program. The third one is very much a team thing. It's called quarterly kickoff. Every quarter, all of my clients come together for a planning session. Now they have a workbook, shall I say, or something, that's get prepared that gets it down to they better show up. They have to show up. The next one will be September 25th, but they show up with their plan already done. And so the exercise of having a 2.5 hour session is getting business owners together, sharing in their successes, going some of the fun stuff in terms of your future self and things I employ very strongly into that. Meaning you build a 90-day plan. Your 90-day plan, three goals is all I have people build, and then it gets down to actual what time you're going to allocate on your calendar for the tasks they're going to apply to that goal, right? And so
Mhm.
that whole thing gets built out. And then the end of that, I have everybody write a letter to themselves as if they've accomplished everything in this plan. And so when I give out awards at the end of the quarterly kickoff, as I give out the awards, then they read my next 90 days are going to be, this is the celebration I'm going to have. And I think getting the mindset as far as a coaching technique, getting the mindset around where I'm going to get, again, same thing, a lot of Covey stuff. What's the end in mind? Well, that's what I try to build in that. I got a note from a guy named Jack Canfield the other day. You probably heard of him, Chicken Soups guy.
Yeah.
And he's saying, hey, come on out to my place in Santa Barbara. Let's have a little get together for the weekend and come as your 5 year future self. Dress the part, live the part, play the role for the whole weekend. Wow.
Like it.
That's kind of interesting. But then I realized that I've been doing that with only a 90-day thing with this letter. I thought, well, I've been using that technique, but breaking it out in five. And so it's kind of interesting when you think of what your five. My 5-year future self will be, I'll be 75 years old, and I'm going to shoot my age in golf. I'm going to hit a 75, 75.
I like it.
Got to set something in front of you, right, to go get.
Yeah.
Shoot
And
your age.
practice has got to be like, oh darn, I got to get those to those links because I got a goal. Must go
Yeah,
play golf.
that's right. Got to go play golf. But part of
Sorry, honey.
this whole book, Jill, the idea of peak experiences is when time slows down and we gather a lot of information in a really short time. And once we've got this information, we can't manifest it at that point. It's too much. But we do manifest it over time. So what I've done in the book is tried to capture those specific kind of things, which comes down to, as you were just mentioning, a lot of deliberate practice. To get a true peak experience in one's life, I think they got to put the time in typically, or at least to get a higher level. I talk in the opening or the opening chapter about me skiing in snow up to my neck off the back of Lake Louise, in sun or up in Alberta. And when I was going, the idea of skiing in the snow rather than on the snow is totally part of that. Meaning you have a 3D feel where you're, and people have skied powder and know that feeling. It's an unbelievable feeling. But that peak experience of having that where time is slowed down for sure for me, even though I'm on a fall line going straight down, but I grab so much information of confidence of what I've done to practice to get the opportunity to have this feeling. And therefore, my speaking abilities, my confidence in what I did, and all of it grew out of that. And so, what I try to capture in the book is for people to get those moments and where they have them and learn how to take geometric curves out of them to grow faster. That's my purpose in that book and kind of my vision of what that's about. How to share it with you.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And it just lots of gold nuggets in here. So let me ask you that question. What, let me find it first so I can ask it appropriately. What's the most significant thing in your opinion as individuals we can do to make an impact on how the world is going?
Well,
I'm
we
glad we're
said it.
asking this at the
Yeah,
end.
yeah, no, that's great. I think your approach of leading this is fantastic, and you brought it out multiple times, and it's being present, really being present in the moment of where you are and what you're doing. And then, of course, obviously being cognizant of what you're doing within that whole moment. That's all part of it. I think you got to show up and you got to show up as who you want to be and be the right person to do that. And then there's the element following that of being true to yourself. Lots of people are real good at the internal voice versus the external voice being two different things. And therefore, authenticity falls out the bottom of the bucket. So I think those are key things for people in terms of significance. They're very internal things, but hey, we have control of ourselves. When I teach disc and work with people and they're kind of looking at their profiles and kind of, I got to remind them that they can be whoever they want to be. It's just knowledge to know what maybe you need to work on in order to be better. When you get into an argument with somebody, do you really want to be an S? Maybe you want to be a D. Being you don't want to be a dove, you need to be an eagle at this point. How do you adjust that? Raising children, you need to know when to draw the line, and some parents have a hard time with that, and on and on. But it's the present of where I'm at now, what I'm doing, and what I'm gonna do at this time to make a difference, in the world. I mean, you can do it by random kindness, acts of kindness, right? I love it. Go to the grocery store, see somebody, you can help them out and help them out. I couldn't do that kind of stuff that far back. I got a new hip put in about, I don't know, 6 months ago. And now I'm mobile and active like I never was before. And so if anybody's listening to this and thinking about getting a new hip, do it. If you're a candidate, because what a change in life. But that I can do better random acts of kindness now, I guess. And that's part of being present.
Mm.
Mhm.
Just being aware of what's happening around you too. There's opportunities for you to do things, and you may never experience the result of what you're doing, but that ripple effect will go out in a way that will impact you at some point later. And you may never
Comes back
understand it,
around.
but
Yeah.
it will come around. I, there's there's a habit that people get into at Starbucks. It's happened a couple of times that I'll go through
Yeah.
Starbucks and somebody will,
Bipolar.
yeah, they'll buy the person behind them's order.
Right.
And so when they get there, it's like, oh, no, you've been paid for.
Yeah.
It's just like it's fun.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I've done that many times in restaurants and stuff, especially if my
Yeah.
wife and I are at a restaurant and I see a young couple that, are enjoying the heck out of their lives, but you could tell they probably don't have a lot to spend on that. And then all of a sudden their bill's paid for and they're like, what? And I don't let them know that I've done it either. I just do it.
Yeah, you don't have to.
I
It's
don't
just
need any
like
credit for it.
it's
I just
just
want to
like
feel and see
inside.
it.
It's just like
Yeah,
watching.
yeah, yeah. Make somebody's day is well worth it. Like I say, it's funny, the more I give, the more I get as I go along. I've noticed throughout my life. I mean, as a pattern. When you get
Mhm.
out there and give, when I donate more, all of a sudden something shows up that I didn't expect. And I go, okay, I guess it's all working out. Big guy's got control of things. Just get out of the way, man, and do what you feels right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Be
Doesn't have
kind
to be
and
that complex, does it, Jill?
nah, it's just little things. It's just the little things that make such a big difference. People just want to be seen and acknowledged.
You noticed as soon as you got on that my belt board in the back
I know. Oh,
was
we're
your
so sweet.
name. And part of what I coach, right, is the idea of getting from what you get as an expected person versus appreciated. Well, that takes people from expected to appreciated immediately. And I think that's a good starting point rather than working on what am I getting as expected. And the ideal situation is taking people to a distinguished state rather than just the expected, where they know, from this call or you get to know me and going, if somebody needs a business coach, Coach Hess is the guy, you
Yeah.
know. And it's not about whatever he charged, whatever it is, it's about his philosophy, his life, his what he's going to do to make a difference. Well, then you're in that distinguished category. And what people say about you when you're not in the room is very important because
It is.
yeah,
Might not be a lot of your business, but it is very important.
yeah, yeah,
So you offer people your 10th chapter of your book so that
yeah.
they want to go back and read the first nine.
Well, I offered the 10th chapter of this book, right? Now this is an anthology, and so there's nine other or eight other authors.
Mhm.
Nine. So I
But
just
this
wrote
is
one
cracking the
chapter,
success code.
Cracking the Success Code, the best business lesson I ever learned. I'll just share with everyone. I mean, this is kind of a big deal, but I became an Amazon bestseller because of that book. And
Mhm.
so what happened was that all nine of us, wrote our chapters, put it together, and of course got it on KDP and all the regular publishing process. And then we made sure we reached out to our network and had everybody buy one within a 24-hour period on Kindle at 99 cents. And we sold more than anybody in the world for that period, that 1 day period. And therefore, I have an Amazon best-selling author stamp for the rest of my life. And so do all the other nine authors of the book. So that's why I'm giving that book or that chapter away. It's the chapter out of that book there. So it's not like I'm teasing them like you were suggesting.
No, but they might want to go and get your other book.
Oh yeah, Peak Experience is worth reading. People are loving it. I get a lot of good positive feedback. And then the new one, it'll come out at the end of September. Achieving Peak Performance, The Entrepreneurial's Journey. I've written that in conjunction with a lawyer,
Mhm.
guy named Stu Levin, and he covered some important areas that I don't have the expertise in. How do you set your LLCs relative? You go C corp, S corp, those kind of things. The right way to set your tax structures from a legal perspective. And certainly a lot on copyright and making sure you're trademarked properly and so on. He covered, of course, I covered all the rest of building, scaling, running, and exiting your business.
Yeah, exiting your business. So many people don't think about that.
I force all my clients into building three plans. Got to have a business plan. Number two, you got to have an operation plan. How you going to operate? You write down your KPIs and what you're going to do there. But the third one is completion plan. What does your business look like when it's done? Let's think about that now and build towards that, back to the end in mind. And they struggle, and it changes. Once we go back to it after a year, it's not the same it was, oftentimes the year before, but it's nice to have a marker out there looking at it. Yeah. I've got all those templates built and they'll be available for people to buy the book or when I put it out on Kindle or whatever. People can link and get all the templates to build all of that. I've got all that structured. I think that's the way I wanted this book to be more like something that's a help manual rather
Mhm.
than, peak experience, a little more enjoy, read manual. This is more like you want to build a business, follow some of these principles and you'll do much better.
And people, it's not hard to start a business. There's so many things, so many gaps in the world that need filling.
Yeah.
It's just like
Yeah.
stepping out and doing it. I have a daughter whose husband, she and her husband, have their own business in San Diego. And they basically they do swales, but they do liners for like golf courses, the ponds. They all
Okay.
have to
Yeah.
have
Yeah. Yeah.
liners
Okay.
in them.
Yeah. I'm with you. Yeah.
And they deteriorate over time. So he does that. I want to say he's a mechanical engineer,
Sure.
but they've done amazingly well. Just starting out on a shoestring with an idea. And my other
Yeah.
my
That's
another one of my sons,
fun.
his wife started a business doing some soil testing or something, and they also live in San Diego. But it's just get out there, get started,
Do
have an
something.
idea.
Yeah.
It's better if you have a plan and an exit plan and an idea of how you're going to operate, but you don't have to be married to it. It's going to change and adapt, and you can change all three pieces of that as you grow. And you know,
Yeah.
what you want at 30 is not the same as what you want at 55 anyway. So
Well, isn't that the truth? And I encourage people, like the idea of building a small business and creating a win-win scenario with social impact while you do it. And every business can have social impact. I don't care what business it is. You just have to have a mindset that says, here's what we're going to put in place to do that. And it can create more business and also create a positive social impact. And I really work with businesses to make that parallel happening for them because they're better off, society's better off, and but some people don't have that mindset. And I found when I've run across those, they're probably not the people I should be coaching.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I just unless they're going to change, and I give them a good chance and opportunities to change. But if it's not happening, got to move on to what you can make a difference with.
Yeah, and it really is about people not just wanting change, but willing to actively participate in change. And not everybody's cut out that way. You know,
Yeah.
some people, they just want to lay on the bed and hope that somebody's going to come along and make them well suddenly without actively participating in life.
Well,
Just
even business
doesn't
owners that
help.
don't take the time to know their numbers.
Yeah.
It's in that bit of that category. It's amazing how many people, and I get it. I get a lot of my clients are very creative in nature, and they don't think in numbers, so to say.
Mhm.
But my job as a business coach is to make sure everybody really knows their numbers. Four types of cash I go through every client's meeting. Obviously, revenue, it's pretty straightforward, but you got to figure out how to make that so that number two, you have profit. Because if you don't have profit, what are you doing? And then third one is cash flow. And that's where it makes all the difference in the world is that I have everybody build a pro forma for at least 12 months in front of them off
Mhm.
their profit and loss. And by putting the actuals in against what they're projecting to happen in the front, makes all the difference in the world for people making good decisions to grow their business. I mean, it gets down, that's where the rubber hits the road. And then the fourth type of cash is equity. What's your business worth? Are you building a business that you can move on to somebody else? Or, who's going to pay for it? Well, if you don't have systems in place and things running where it's running without you or close to that, you're not going to get a lot of value for your business. Those that are just built on my back kind of thing. We've all heard about work on your business rather than in your business, but this is where it the rubber hits the road, I think, when you talk the equity game and get people thinking that way.
Yeah. The cash flow thing is what trips up so many small businesses. They may have a lot of revenue that they've generated, but it's the payables thing. When is that actual cash coming in?
Yeah.
Can trip
Yeah, the
people up.
cash gaps, especially when they make the move from about 350,000 into the 500,000 bracket, that's when cash gaps start showing up because they're working with bigger suppliers or whatever else, and they
Mhm.
got bigger jobs, and then it gets worse. That it'll escalate if they don't understand how to manage that at that point, because you get $1 million on your revenue side, and you're trailing behind on your collect or receivables by 90 days, you're screwed. If you don't
Well,
have,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And I had conversations with my son-in-law about that because they get $1 million contracts with the government, who's notoriously bad at paying. And so then you have to fund that all up front.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
it's
Tell
an
your laborers, we're going to pay you when we get paid. Good luck on having them show up the next day.
yeah, yeah. And then
Yeah.
when you do business with the government, they have all these rules about who you're going to hire as
Oh
well. So
yeah.
it's just
Oh
like
yeah.
it's there's a lot to it that people, and it's not to scare people from starting, because
Okay.
I believe everybody should give it a go. But just recognize that there's going to be a learning curve, and there's information out there available. Heck, Coach Hess is writing the book. So get
There
that.
you go. That's right. Yeah, yeah. That's
It'll help you.
that'll help. Yeah, the stories I hear from my clients at times is just amazing, and I learn the beauty of my job. I get to learn every day, all the time. Back to that continuous learning. It's really fun to have that. It's been
Yeah.
great being on this podcast with you and sharing some of that because sometimes you do a great job of pulling it out of me. I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you coming and joining me today. This has been an amazing conversation.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
To learn more about a coach Greg Hess and grab his free gift, the Chapter 10, Breaking the Success Code, The Power of a Common Goal, please visit www.coachhess.com, and we will be sure to put that link in the show notes below. Thank you for tuning in with us today. If you have a podcast or are interested in starting one, be sure to reach out to us at support@heartlifecoach.com. We love to help spiritual entrepreneurs and coaches amplify their voice and monetize their mission, and offer a variety of ways to do this, leveraging Substack. Join us for our next episode as we share what others are doing to raise the global frequency. And remember, change begins with you. You have all the power to change the world. Start today and get visible.